Hi guys, it's Paula and I hope you are doing well. Today is another episode of Exhibit A, Hard Evidence that I do not need this palette. This is my first episode that is a request at the end of my last video of Evidence A, the one on the Urban Decay Beach palette. I opened it up to you guys to give me requests and I said I would try and do them. A friend of mine, her name is Faye Nicole, requested that I talk about this palette in Exhibit A, and I'm happy to do so. This is my fourth episode of Exhibit A, if we can call it an episode. The first one was on the Urban Decay Naked Heat Petite palette. The second one was the Urban Decay Back Talk palette. The third one was the Urban Decay Beached palette, and now we are doing the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. I don't know if you notice a common factor among those four episodes, but they are all Urban Decay palettes. And it is just a coincidence that it is working out that way. I also think it is obvious that Urban Decay is releasing palette after palette after palette faster than we can possibly keep up with. And unless you are truly just collecting makeup for the sake of collecting it, which is fine, it is too much. It is too much for us to realistically use. If it takes a year to 2 years to pan one of these palettes and they're releasing a palette every month, we have to be selective about what we buy and what we take a pass on. And it's a skill that I am building and learning for myself. And if it's anything that I can do to help any of you, then I'm happy that we do it together, because it is really tempting to buy them all, especially when you have access to things like Ulta points where you can just get them for free. Free makeup is awesome and I love free makeup, but I also don't want to be bringing in more makeup than I can actually use up, and that's kind of the predicament I'm in right now. I have more makeup than I can actually use, and I don't want to just declutter it for the sake of getting it back down to a reasonable number, because everything I have for a reason, so I want to use it. It's a constant struggle. I've talked about it time and time and time again. You guys know how I feel about this, but let's talk about the reasons why I personally do not need the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. Now, I was not originally going to do a video on this palette because the truth is, I really like the way this palette looks. This is the best looking Urban Decay palette that I have seen in a long time. It really covers a lot of bases and hits a lot of areas of color in this one palette. The other three Urban Decay palettes that I did an Exhibit A on were very monochromatic or duochromatic. I mean, they had like an orange color scheme or a pink color scheme, or they were orange with a pop of blue. Very simple and basic, and it was easier for me to say, no, I got that already 10 times over. I don't need any more of it. This palette was a lot different because it has so much more color to it, but it was also really hard to go through my stash and look through all the palettes for this kind of color combination. So thank you for bringing me this challenge, Miss Faye Nicole. I do appreciate a good challenge. This was hard, and the truth is, when I originally started looking at my stash for the purpose of filming this video, I was in my head doing it for you guys because I still thought I might want this palette down the road, at least once it went on sale. But the truth is, after preparing for this video, I think it's out of my system. I think I have seen enough eyeshadows in my own stash to say, no, I really do not need this palette, and I really do have what I need, and I don't need to buy any more eyeshadows. There's no look that can come from that palette that I can't do with what I already have. So if you guys have a lot of eyeshadows, please have fun and shop your stash and see if you can come up with the shadows within your own collection to dupe this palette. Now, this video is not a duping video per se. I am not looking for exact dupes in my collection to mimic this palette. If you are looking for exact dupes, please, please, please go check out my friends Amanda D and Jessica Lee. I don't think it's a coincidence that their names rhyme. they're BFFs, and yeah, they do everything together, so of course their names rhyme. But they do a series called Clone Wars. Now, so far I haven't seen them do Clone Wars on this particular palette, but it's a lot of fun to watch their videos, and they provide dupes or close enough dupes from their own stash for the palettes that they do, and they also provide swatches. What I am trying to do over here is shop my stash for palettes that have a similar vibe. So when I look at the Born to Run palette overall, the vibe that I'm getting is a very warm toned palette with some green, some blue, and some purple. And I don't know if I necessarily have a palette in my own stash that exactly mimics that palette. In fact, I'm quite sure I don't. But as I was looking through my palettes in my stash, I definitely saw plenty of warm purple, blue, and green. There's just tons of it. Now, when it comes to shopping your stash, it always is easier to find what you're looking for when you have a ginormous stash to begin with, like I do. So if your stash is small, you may not have all of these colors within it, but maybe you have half of these colors or a quarter of these colors. Maybe it would make more sense to just buy 1 or 2 single shadows from a company that sells single shadows to complete the look that you're going for, rather than to buy an entire palette. Just food for thought. But that's kind of what I'm trying to help you guys with. And if I can help you, I'm so glad I did. If you just have fun looking at my stash and seeing what makeup I have, then I'm glad I can do that too. So I actually have quite a few things to show you guys. Let's get started. If any of you guys have seen my inventory before, then you know that I have an absolute ton of single eyeshadows. And I thought about going through my single eyeshadows for the sake of this video, because it would be the easiest way to get the most accurate dupes of this palette. But the truth is, that's really not what this video is intended to do. It's not that I'm going for exact dupes. It's that I'm going through palettes that I already have and saying, you have enough palettes, Paula. Don't buy any more palettes. So I do, however, have some single shadows that are in Z palettes. And so I thought I would show you a couple of those to get started, because they're definitely giving me those same Born to Run vibes. And first of all, I know I've shown this before, but I'm showing it again because I guess I just want to remind myself that I have these before I buy another palette, because I'm not getting enough use out of these. And this would make a beautiful palette. And what I'm talking about is this Z palette full of singles here. So many of these colors are very close to the colors of the Born to Run palette. These are mostly Makeup Geek foiled eyeshadows that I bought in a bundle. And then there's some random shades, like that's MAC Coppering. These I depotted from an old palette, and I think I have some like Luxie Beauty colors in here and some stuff like that. But basically, I see a lot of warm with some blue, some green, and some purple right there. So before I go and buy another palette, I should consider enjoying these amazing quality single shadows that are just sitting in my stash. Some not quite as amazing quality shadows are in this very beat up Z palette right here. This has seen better days. There's some crumbly bits that I need to deal with, but I'm not ready to. But look at all of the green, blue, and purple here. I haven't touched any of these shadows in probably 2 years. I definitely do not need to buy another palette. If you have singles like this sitting in your Z palettes, maybe you don't need to buy it either. Another palette that I often bring out in these videos, because it is so warm toned and so multifunctional, is the Morphe x Jaclyn Hill palette. If you guys are sick of me showing this, I'm so sorry. But again, warm toned, check. Blue, green, purple, check, check, check. Right there. If you have this palette, you might not need the Born to Run palette. Have I ever used this? No. I've had this now for at least a year. I think I bought this a year ago. I've still never used this even once. I have no business buying another palette if I still have this untouched in my stash. Some other palettes that were definitely giving me the Born to Run vibes are all of my Juvia's Place palettes. And I have never used most of these even once either. Juvia's Place is a great small business makeup company. They're a ton of fun and you get a ton of variety. I do have some palettes of theirs that do not fit into this video. I have the Nubian one is all neutrals. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous all neutral palette that I love, but that doesn't fit into this video. I also have one called the Zulu palette that's basically all like neon fluorescent colors, and that doesn't fit into this either. But I have 5 Juvia's Place palettes that I think remind me of Born to Run in one way or another. And a lot of it has to do with, again, the warm toned neutrals, the warm toned neutrals overall with the pops of blue, purple, and green. So let's go through that. This is called the Saharan. I did use this for a 1 week, one palette, so this is not completely brand new. You can see right here that there's a ton of warm with some green. There's no purple or blue, but you got the green covered right there. So I should consider using that. The Saharan 2, the follow-up to the last one, is an amazing palette that I have never, ever, ever used even once. And there's the warm with some blue or some aqua and a purpley color. Up next is the Masquerade Mini. This is a fabulous palette that I have never used even once. Blues, greens, purples, warms. I would much rather have this palette with this quality from a small business that I believe is, are they vegan and cruelty free? They might be vegan and cruelty free, I'm not sure. But I would rather support them than Urban Decay, to be honest with you. And I already have them, so it's not even a debate. I have it, I should use it. I have palettes that I have never ever touched. I cannot even believe that I'm still considering buying new palettes. I don't know what's wrong with me. Up next is the Nubian 2 palette. And again, warm neutrals with blues and greens. This is the palette that Hazel has played with and I have never used even once. And then finally, this is a monster of a palette. It's called the Magic. Here it is right here. You can see how big it is. Let me show you this compared to a Too Faced palette. This is a typical Too Faced tin, the 18 pan palettes. This is over 2 times as tall as the Too Faced palette. Wait till you see the size of these pans. They're like the size of a blush pan. These are absolutely huge pans. They look small because this palette is so huge, but let me show you another palette that I'm going to talk about in a second. ColourPop. All I see is Magic. This is a pretty close dupe to some of those Born to Run shades. Look at the size of the ColourPop pans versus the Juvia's Place pans. These are monsters. It is going to take me forever if I ever decide to pan this palette. And I have never used it even once. There's blues, there's a purpley blue, there's greens, there's a pink, and there's these warm toned mattes that are gorgeous. This is a gorgeous palette. I should use this before I buy the Born to Run palette, for sure. These palettes are so much fun. There are 2 new palettes that have come out since my last Juvia's Place palette, and I am craving them so bad. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 Juvia's Place palettes that I've never used even once, and one that I used for 7 days. I can't buy any more of those palettes either. I'm going to do an exhibit A on those. But all of those definitely are giving me that Born to Run vibe. So it may not be that you have the exact Born to Run palette in your stash, but that between a couple of those palettes, you will have the shadows you need to dupe or, you know, get a similar look from the Born to Run palette. Okay, we just talked about All I See Is Magic. There's the green, same green from Born to Run. I definitely have that warm toned with some pops of color vibe from this Too Faced Clover palette. Definitely is giving me some Born to Run vibes. There's some greens, some blues, some purples, and some warm colors. My OG Wet n Wild Comfort Zone palette is actually giving me some Born to Run vibes over here with those greens and some of these warmer shades right here, along with some of the greens, and this duochrome looks a lot like the duochrome shade from that palette. So this, I think, can give you some very similar looks to the Born to Run palette. If any of you picked up this NYX Avant Pop palette before they discontinued it, it is the one right here. NYX palettes can be pretty hit or miss, but this one is excellent quality. I used this for a month and I absolutely loved it. I actually got some little dips going on in a couple of the shades. But yeah, this is an outstanding palette. If you have this, bust it out, use it. You don't need the Born to Run palette. Another older palette that I found while shopping my stash is from BH Cosmetics. It's called the Enhancing Eyes, and I believe this one was for hazel eyes. They did one for different eye colors, and I picked up the one for hazel eyes and the one for brown eyes. But this palette has quite a similar vibe as the Born to Run palette. So if you have this one, pull it out, play with it. That sounds dirty. All right, I'm gonna show you guys one more palette, another one that is brand new to me. I have never used it even once on my eyeballs. So maybe I should use this one before blowing a bunch of Ulta points on another new palette. And I am talking about the Tarte. Holy cow, that smells so good. The Tarte, you wanna smell it? Yeah, sure. Does it smell good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Mom.
It smells like Mom?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, honey. The Tarte Make Believe in Yourself palette. I got this on sale. I thought it was such a great deal. It is a gorgeous palette with gorgeous colors. Blues, greens, purples, check, check, check. Warm colors, check. Very similar to the vibe you're gonna get from the Born to Run palette. And this is brand new. I have never used it even once. So, where does that leave us? I am willing to bet that a lot of you guys are intrigued by this Born to Run palette. I definitely think that it is the best looking Urban Decay release that has come out in quite a while. Certainly better than the other 3 Urban Decay palettes I did an exhibit A on prior to this. It is really intriguing and interesting, but don't be fooled by the cute packaging. Don't be fooled by the color scheme. Shop your stash first and see if you have these colors, because even if you might not have an exact palette that looks exactly like that Born to Run palette, you may have those shades between a couple of palettes. And it would be so much more satisfying to use and enjoy the palettes that you have versus buying another new palette with the same colors that you already have across a couple of existing palettes. While I was doing kind of my review of this palette prior to doing this video, I did also get a chance to kind of do a quick comparison of this Born to Run palette to the Tarte Mermaid palette, the one in the shell. And there are some similar vibes between those two. I do not have that Tarte palette. I am passing on that, at least so far. I haven't bought it. But talk about another warm palette with pops of blue and green. I don't think there's a purple in that palette, but yeah. If you have that palette, you may not need the Born to Run palette as well. So I do hope this video is helpful to those of you who are trying to resist the urge to buy the Born to Run palette. I wish you all the best of luck at shopping your stash. I do think that the preparation for this video, pulling these palettes out and reminding myself that I have so much makeup that I've never used even once, has cured me of wanting this palette personally. Even though I started creating this video for somebody else, I actually think it has been really helpful for me, because in the back of my mind, I was really thinking, okay, I'll do this video for Faye Nicole because she requested it, but the truth is, if this palette goes on sale, I think I'm gonna need it. And yeah, pulling all these palettes out for this video made me realize that I really do not need it, and that I really have it already. I really have it. I hope you guys can find this palette within your stash by looking at palettes you already have. And I hope it was helpful. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.